How the hell do you start DMing your first campaign? This is a nuts and bolts, meat and potato kind of video for how to DM your first campaign. We're going to assume that you're going to do a session 0, and we're going to assume that you're not doing a pre-planned, pre-published, or professionally published adventure like Curse of Strahd or Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden kind of adventures. For this video also, there's a difference between adventures, campaign, and setting. An adventure is a self-contained story where the player characters go on an adventure, deal with a threat or a problem, solve that problem, and then return home, usually for some downtime. But the adventure itself usually lasts only a few sessions, maybe several sessions, but it's implied that there will be more adventures after this adventure. A campaign is the linked adventures going through that are all connected via the same player characters. Some player characters may die during the course of the adventures, but overall it exists within the same timeline and within the same world, which is the setting. The setting is the location overall, the universe in which it's taking place, including the time in the history of that world. So you can set several campaigns in the same timeline with different player characters or even different players. You can set several campaigns in different settings, so there's no way they could cross over within the lore or in the realm. The first part for being a dungeon master and setting up your first campaign is to choose a setting. With the setting, you can choose a pre-published campaign setting, such as Forgotten Realms or Eberron, or you can create your own, do your own maps, and create your own histories within the setting. You want to choose a region in the setting, preferably one with a large town, 1,000 people population or more. The player, you don't have to start the player characters in that town, as most towns will have satellite villages and hamlets that help support the city through farming and various other trades. These satellite settlements will usually be within 1 or 2 days of travel of the primary settlement, the large town or large city, or the town or city. If you're using a pre-published setting and the region doesn't have the region that you want to start in doesn't have details on the smaller hamlets and satellite villages and stuff like that around the city that you've chosen, you can easily just pick a few locations around that town that seem relevant and that might be good places for farming or for livestock or general trade routes, and just put a hamlet, couple hundred people, or there'd be village, couple hundred to 800 people, and hamlets 50 to 100 people or so. And you can put a hamlet or two within half a day's travel from the primary settlement, and then a full day's travel, or maybe even full day's travel from the hamlet, you can put some villages which are larger, and they may even have a few smaller hamlets or thorps under 50 people that are nearby to it. And maybe you just want to use a map, but you don't want to use the actual setting. Like you have access to a map online, but you don't have access to the book that it comes from. So, like, take for example the Forgotten Realms. You could find a map online of the Forgotten Realms and say you want to use Silvery Moon as the region. So zoom in on Silvery Moon, and now you can choose 300 by 300 mile area around Silvery Moon. So when starting out, you can choose to have a small hamlet north of Silvery Moon, about 10 miles, half a day's walk on the road to Sundabar, and you can place that hamlet, and we'll call it Wheathold. And then another hamlet you can place another half days from Wheathold, further up the road towards Sundabar, and we'll call that one Low Pass because it's the start of going into the mountain pass between Silvery Moon and Sundabar, as you can see on the map. And then a full day's travel from Wheathold will place a village, larger, over 100 people population, under 800-ish, and we'll call it Silver Farms, might as well, because it's allied with Silvery Moon, and it provides a lot of the farming for Silvery Moon, a lot of wheat, crops, that kind of thing. And in between Silver Farms and Wheathold is where we assume the primary farms are all located, probably on a road or a trail, enough to be able to handle small carriages, carts, that kind of thing. In the hills to the southeast of Low Pass, we'll place another village. This one's a mining village that we'll call East Mine. It's a day's walk from Low Pass, but it's through hills. So the trail to it is a little more winding and meandering, so it's only half the actual mileage from Low Pass that Silver Farms is from Wheathold. And then if you're using a map like this, you can add the titles, pop those in, and a hand-drawn map is perfectly fine, but you can also use software to cut and paste and crop images, blow them up, and then put in your own information as you go. So you can add in, if you have a ruin in some location, you can have your own DM map where you're loading that in, and then give the players the player map, which just shows what they've discovered so far. Okay, so now you have a region that you're going to play with, and you have a large settlement picked out that will be the focal point for any civilization in the area for the campaign, and then some satellite settlements. Now we get into the lore. Either before session 0 or right at the start of it, tell your players how in-depth you are in the campaign setting. Meaning, if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms or another published campaign setting, tell them, you know what, I'm just using the maps, but it's my own world, the civilizations, the history, it's all my own. I'm making it up, so don't count on any of that. And I'll have a handout for you guys that will go over some basic points. Or everything in the books is canon up until, if it's Forgotten Realms, like 1356 DR. Everything up to that point is canon. Everything after that has not happened and might not happen. But you can use anything from before that time as basis for your characters and for their backstories to build into the campaign. Like I mentioned, if you're using your own campaign setting and you're doing your own history and your own lore, then you want to give the players half a page of bullet points, nothing major, just some key information about the general history that would affect their characters. So you don't want to go into ancient history and, rise and fall of kingdoms and stuff like that for them. What's that going to be of use to them unless they want to tie something in, which they will generally have an idea of that themselves and come to you and say, hey, I have a character that I want tied to some ancient civilization. Is there anyone in the area? And then you can either make it up to fit, or you might already have something planned. Lore is historical and social information about the world. So a few bullet points for this Forgotten Realms map, but homebrew setting or homebrew history lore that you're doing would go something like: north of the Delambir River, the city-states are similar to the late medieval architecture and semi-egalitarian social stratification. You start here, you tell the players, in the territory controlled by the city-state of Silvery Moon. South of the Delambir River there's kingdoms that are reminiscent of mid-Renaissance Byzantium architecture with a 4-tier social hierarchy: aristocrats, nobles, mercantile, and labor. 10 years ago, the elves in the High Forest were either corrupted or cursed, There are many rumors, but no one's sure of the cause, and the elves are now troll-like and hunger for sentient flesh. The Evermores are a source of peat for fuel, but tribes of gnolls have begun to make the marshes and swamps their home in the past year. Most of the large settlements in the region are built on the ruins of forgotten kingdoms. Some, like Silvery Moon, have been continuously inhabited since that age. They may or may not have any memory of those previous kingdoms, and there might have been several dark ages where people just kind of continued to live but didn't keep records, and so the information is lost. Smaller settlements view adventurers as troublesome meddlers at best and criminals at worst. And then larger settlements require adventurers to register with the city government and tax all discovered goods and monies. It is illegal for merchants to buy such goods and have not been brought to the city's appraisers for a writ of the taxed. There's a lot of videos and articles and even information in some of the official books that tell you how to run a session 0 and what you need to include for doing your session 0 for your campaign. And I may do a specific video on it at some point, but there's a lot of people that have done a lot of good information out there, so I suggest searching for Session 0 on YouTube. But for right now, on how to run a campaign, we're going to look at 2 key things in Session 0 that you need to cover. But for right now, we're going to look at 3 key things in a Session 0 that you should cover for starting a campaign. First, what do the players want? Are the players interested in a combat-oriented campaign, or are they more interested in a political intrigue, or are they interested in kind of a social aspect, school level politics and interactions? A little bit of both, or a little bit of all of that, or they want none of that and they just want kind of an exploration with minimal combat, but they want to discover new things. Most players will have varying degrees of interest in these aspects of the game, but you want to find out immediately so that you know whether to set up adventures for combat or to have more adventures centered around finding out things from different NPCs and then telling other NPCs that information, which then causes them to want things to be done. And so you can set up almost a rumor mill that goes on in the campaign, and as things build, then events resolve. If players have wildly different interests, like you have one player that is only interested in social encounters and doesn't care about combat, and you have another player that is really interested in combat but doesn't give a crap about social interaction, then you need to talk to them and say, look, how can we compromise on this? What can we do to make this fun for everybody? Because you as a DM may have an interest in one or the other, or to some degree, and you want to make sure that everybody's having fun. So if you can't get people to compromise, then you may have to decide to either say, hey, look, this is what I'm going to run. It's okay if you don't join in this campaign, or hopefully they'll compromise. Sometimes they won't, and sometimes you just have to say, okay, well, I'm not going to have fun running that, and that's a deal breaker for you. And it might be for some of the players as well. So, and that's okay. It just means that you're going to have to look for either another group or different players, or they're going to have to look for a different group or a different DM. Next is setting up the backstories for the player characters during Session 0. If you saw my video on PC Backstories, you'll know that I'm going to talk about the alterations. And in that, you'll want to use Session 0 to weave the backstories of each player character into each other so that they all know how and why they've started traveling and working together as adventurers. And when I say find, I mean create. So you are going to be using your imagination to create reasons why these characters are working together. If you want to do something simple, like they've all met in a tavern and the adventure is going to start there, then what you want to do during this part of the session 0 is explain how they all got to that tavern. You want to figure out why they're there and then give them possible reasons why they might want to work together. And then you can either run that as just kind of an impromptu, here's how the characters are interacting in the tavern and how they meet, and fully role play that out as part of the session 0, or save it for the first session. But you want to get them up to the starting point. And if they're just going to first meet, then you know that you're going to have, not problems, but it increases the chance for problems to arise where characters don't have any ties to make them want to continue to work with the other characters. You want the player characters to want to work together, which means you want the players to work together. And if you have, during this session 0, the various players working together to create and weave their backstories together, then that gives them the incentive to keep working together. For example, let's say you've got Kamala and Bruno, and their characters, they've decided that their characters are siblings, and that's why they're together adventuring as family. And then you have Bobby, who's another player, and brings in his character that doesn't have a relation to anybody. And so in the alterations period, you can say, oh, well, one time when Bruno was out doing some shopping or something in the local market, he was in the market at the same time as Bobby's character. And both of their characters were then ambushed by cultists. And only by working together were they able to fight off the cultists. Then when Bruno brings Bobby's character back to meet his character's sister, Kamala's character, you can say, well, Kamala recognizes Bruno's character, or Bobby's character, as a childhood friend. And that when they were children, Bobby's character was taken by who knows who, right? We can leave that as a mystery or give that to the players to decide, and was taken away from their village at an early age and then is now here. And then that gives Bobby a reason, or maybe more incentive, to figure out, oh, do I know who took my character? Did I just escape while I was being transported somewhere else, and as a child came into another village that adopted me? Those kind of things can be set up during the session 0. Now, when you get involved during the session 0 of weaving the backstories, what you want to do is try to avoid power disparities between the characters. So you could have said, oh, well, okay, Bobby's character saves Bruno's character, but that puts Bruno's character in a weaker position, and Bruno, the player, might not really appreciate that or want that or see that as part of their character being saved. So if the players decide, oh yeah, you saved me because I've got no combat ability, great. But you don't want to enforce that. You want to let the players organically come up with their own power disparities during the backstory phase. Because ultimately, unless you have other reasons for doing so, you want all the players to get along. And they'll get along better if they don't feel that they owe each other stuff at the outset of the game. More experienced role players, people that have been doing it for a long time, may just be totally on board with stuff like that and really dive into, oh yeah, I like the fact that my character now owes this other character for saving his life and is constantly trying to find ways to pay that debt. But especially new players, it might feel like a straitjacket for them that, oh no, now they're under the thumb of this other character, and especially and you just want to avoid that unless there's good reasons and everybody's enthusiastically consenting to it. Because weaving together characters' backstories is basically your devil's contract. You're the devil, and you're making a contract with the players. And by weaving them in so that they all have a relationship with other characters and have a reason for adventuring with each other and have a reason for liking each other and being friends, their characters being friends, then that makes it so that if they break that contract, if they do something, like if they're all good friends and they all agreed to be friends, and they're playing that way, and then in session 8 Bobby gets bored And so he has his character Babacus start to, steal from the other characters at night or try to murder one or two of them or all of them. Then you can, before the action actually happens, as the character says, I want to do this, then you can stop everything and say, hey, you remember the contract? You remember why we're friends? Why would your character do this to your friends? This isn't making sense. This seems like bad role playing. It seems like bad faith role playing. And you're publicly shaming them in front of the rest of the group to say, hey, we agreed that this wasn't going to be the case. That players weren't going to attack each other or try to steal from each other, that you are friends and there's reasons for that friendship. Now, if organically, during the course of those 8 sessions, there emerged a role-playing rift between Bobby's character and the other characters that then culminated in an event where it made sense that Bobby would take these actions, then that's fine. But we're just talking about having a social contract with the rest of the players that says, if you take this action, then you get to stop the game and address it and give the players a chance to take it back, because maybe the player's just bored and wants to spur some type of action to happen, which is bad. You don't want that to happen. You want to keep the players entertained, but you also want to make sure that they don't start entertaining themselves at the expense of the rest of the table. So in that example, if you confront Bobby on why his character is doing these things, and Bobby starts by saying, well, my character feels or my character thinks, then that's a good indication that there's a rationale behind what's going on. But if Bobby starts saying, I don't care, or because I'm bored and I just want something to happen, then Bobby may be low empathy and high narcissism, and it might not be in your best interest or the group's best interest to continue gaming with that person. Again, only time will tell. Individuals vary. You don't want to just drop somebody for having a bad moment. But if behavior like that continues, then yeah, that's a point where, this person probably not good for the campaign. And then you see from those steps above, we've got 2 kind of storylines that have emerged out of that. The first is, who were the cultists? Why did they attack? Did they target the players, or were they just kind of attacking the market in general? What were they doing there? So you've got that as something that you can plan and prepare for future adventures. And then also, who took Bobby's character when he was a child? Did he ever find out? If they pull all that together in their backstories and kind of create the stories and close them, that's fine. Let them have an end to that storyline if they want it during the backstory. But if they don't, if they like the mystery, if they want it to be kind of part of an ongoing thing in the campaign, great, leave it open-ended, and then you can start planning to figure out how to weave those elements into the game. And thirdly, part of the session 0 is you want to introduce some major NPCs. And these aren't like major as in like powerful, but these are just kind of NPCs that you expect the PCs will likely encounter constantly through their role-play. Like Kamala and Bruno's characters' parents might live in Silvery Moon, while Bobby's character's parents were elves in the High Forest that got cursed. The cultists are led by Thuzun, a Minotaur priest of evil deities that is camped out or has taken over, him and his cult has taken over some ruins on the edge of the Evermoors. Arexa is an arrogant half-elf in Silvery Moon that is the primary tax collector and appraiser for adventurer companies. And so the player character's party originally registered with Arexa to become an adventuring party within the city, and will go to her to pay their taxes on any loot that they find. Then Osgrun is a cheerful dwarf that runs the Fox Brew Tavern in Silvery Moon, where the party spends most of their downtime just kind of hanging out. He's a source of rumors, and other information that the players might seek. And then Minrin, who is a local fixer, who finds where people come to Minrin for help. So, especially if it's criminal or missing persons type of events, the families or concerned members will come to Minrin and ask her for help, and she will go out and find adventurers or guards or even thieves guilds, and to try to figure out what's going on and help the families of the people that have been wronged. And so she can be used to go to the party to say, hey, I've got a job, and she takes her cut from whatever the families or individuals are paying her to find out what happened, and then she passes on the rest to the party. Now, the vast majority of NPCs don't need full stat blocks. Name, couple words that describe the personality of the character, their profession, and the location that they're normally found in. Those are the core things that you need for an NPC. You don't need much else. You can keep it simple on one line. You might add something like a level to the NPC, and the level will help you determine hit dice in case it comes to combat, and also a general bonus to any rolls that are relevant to their profession. So like Arexa, you could put level 5, and then that means that that on appraisal checks she gets a +5 bonus to her appraisal checks. If the group has less than 4 players, or if there's several players in a specific class role, like everybody created fighters and barbarians, then you might want to create what's called a DM NPC, which is basically just a sidekick NPC that goes with the party on their adventures. And so in that example, you might create a cleric or a bard or a paladin that has healing capabilities to help the party out. The DMPC is an NPC that you control. You treat it like a PC. They get an equal share of the treasure as far as shares are divided and determined by the party. They get an equal share of XP. They take a cut out of the XP because they're a full player character, treated as one of the party. But they should never be treated as a DM's PC. You want to avoid giving it that weight. They shouldn't get an equal share of the glory or role-playing time that the other players get. They might have small moments. There might be stories that help weave in their backstory, your DM NPC's backstory, but ultimately they need to take a back seat and be treated like a sidekick or a henchman, not henchman, but just a silent partner in the party. You want to get the players attached to the DM NPC. You want to get their characters emotionally attached to DM NPCs in one way or the other. Sometimes a DM NPC might be aggressive and gruff, and other times they might be very kind and helpful. Let the players decide how they like or don't like the DM NPC, but you want to get them invested, but you as the DM don't want to be invested in a DM NPC. The DM NPC is a great character to have to sacrifice in moments where it would make sense. If you need a bad guy to, dastardly drop a block on somebody, drop it on the DM NPC. Crush him. This is how powerful this guy is. He just killed your healer. But you don't want to become emotionally invested in this character to the extent that you are treating them more special than the player characters. And DM NPCs work best when they're socially, economically, and even game mechanically weaker than the rest of the PCs. So if you bring in a DM NPC for the party at later levels, make it a level or two lower than the PCs. You don't have to, but it's not a bad idea so that it doesn't give the players a feeling that, oh, you're bringing in a character to outshine them or to run roughshod over their decisions. Post session 0, the planning, the space of planning. Now that you got session 0 out of the way, you got PC backstories woven, and you got some basic NPCs that they're going to be interacting with, now you can start planning the first adventure. Okay, so what game are we playing? Is it called Dungeons and Dragons? Is it Dungeons and Dragons related or based off of the basic themes of Dungeons and Dragons? All right, for your first adventure, especially if it's a new group of players, and if you're new, you should probably include a dungeon and maybe some dragons. Well, okay, so dragons can be a little powerful and a little overwhelming for first level characters, but definitely include a dungeon. All right, so let's say you want to have your players search for some missing miners. The miners disappeared in their mine. A mine is a dungeon. The plan is to have the player characters enter the mine and search for the missing miners. Now, there's what's called a mega dungeon, which is a dungeon that has tens to hundreds of rooms on a level and has many, many levels. As a first-time DM, you want to stay away from that. It's just, you can just get lost in it. It can take up a lot of time. But what you can do is you can set up in your first dungeon a space where the dungeon can continue. And then if they explore the next space in the next adventure, then you can have another space for it to open up and they can discover more levels or more rooms as they go on. And then you're creating a mega dungeon as you go along. But at the start, you're just taking a basic one level, 5 to 10 rooms, nothing crazy. And so we want to use a small self-contained dungeon, in this case a mine. And so basically a mine is a straight tunnel going into the side of a hill or a mountain or into the earth. It has the occasional side room for storage of ore and mining supplies, and then it will have side tunnels as they chase mineral veins as they find them. So here we're just going to make an outside shack that the miners use to sleep in and store their food goods and take shifts as they do the mining. Then the tunnel is going to be about 10 feet wide. Since it's a fantasy world, it's okay to use larger or smaller than real world mining techniques for the technology level of the campaign. Put a couple of rooms, one on either side of the main tunnel, about 20 or 30 feet in. Then a few side passages that are about 5 feet wide, and maybe connect one or two groups of these side passages with other 5-foot passages that run parallel to the main passage. Near the end of the main tunnel, have one or two more rooms. Then at the very end, there is an opening where the miners broke into a large cavern. Place the dead or captured miners in one of the far back rooms. Populate the mine with several groups of kobolds. One of these groups can contain the leader, who has double the hit points and a higher AC than the rest of them. And so now you've got several encounters. Kobolds guard at the entrance, a group of kobolds in one of the first rooms, a patrolling group of kobolds about halfway down the tunnel, a group down a side passage, and a final boss, kobold and its minions with the captured dead miners. If the PCs or the kobolds make a lot of noise during their encounters, it might attract the next nearest group of kobolds in the mine. And like I said, you can use the opening cavern as a possible next adventure that the PCs might go on. You want to make sure that when they find it, there is a good reason why they shouldn't go on. In this case, you could just make it, you could look over their character sheets before game and make it so that they need a couple extra 50-foot ropes in order to get down a cliff to the base of the cavern that it opens up into. And then with that cavern, you could make it a self-contained cavern with one entrance further up into the hills, or with a cave entrance nearby. That's how the kobolds got in. Or you could start having it open up into further cavern structures, creating a whole labyrinth of caverns and maybe even ruins down below. In either case, you can close it off at any time if you need the players to go somewhere else, or if you want to stop, if you got bored with your dungeon and you want them to move on, you can simply say, okay, now you've explored everything that there is down here. You've found no other exits from any of the places you've explored, and so they all lead back either the mine entrance, or maybe the mine entrance and actual cave entrance somewhere else nearby. The time of planning. So now you want to make a simple timeline of events for the adventure. As you can see, so day -28, so 28 days before the players, or before the main events, the miners find a silver vein, keep it to themselves, and begin mining, only returning to East Mine for supplies. And then 28 days after that, on day 1, the miners are captured by kobolds and are being toyed with until the kobolds decide what to do with them. Day 2, the miners are reported missing in East Mine. So East Mine, the little village, they've realized, hey, the miners haven't been back in for supplies. Day 3, reports of missing miners reach Low Pass, the hamlet on the main road between Silvery Moon and Sundabar. On day 4, the family in Silvery Moon of some of the miners find out, and they contact Minrin, and then Minrin talks to the party, saying, hey, I've got a job. These families are paying me to find out what happened to their missing family members. Day 5, if the PCs head out for East Mine, they reach Low Pass in the evening. They might decide to spend a day in town, but if they head out the next morning, then they'll reach Low Pass in the evening. And then day 6, if the PCs are in Low Pass, they can reach East Mine in the evening, and they can start gathering information at the local tavern. Day 7, earliest the PCs can find the mine is noon. Make them do a survival check, DC 15, add 1 hour for each point below the DC if they failed. So if they rolled a 13, then it's at 2 in the afternoon that they actually find the mine. On day 8, if nothing else happens, if the players don't go searching for it, if none of the miners from East Mine find the mine that they might be searching for, day 8, around noon, the kobolds decide to eat and kill and eat the miners. So now you know that if the PCs take too much time, the miners will be killed. But they have a chance to find them alive and be the heroes. This timeline also gives you a quick checklist to reference if the PCs start asking questions from any of the other NPCs in the world. When did the miners start mining? When did they disappear? When were they last seen? Etc. You can use all of that to help your improv if the characters start asking NPCs these questions. And finally, the stuff of the adventure. So you want to give the kobolds some treasure. Not much, but maybe low-value gems, some artwork that maybe they found, or not artwork, but if there's ruins, or if you want ruins to be in the cavern, they might find artwork or statues or other things that they're keeping on their person, small trinkets, that kind of thing made out of gold. If they carry coins, if you give the kobolds coins, take a moment to think, did they get the coins from raiding nearby mines, and did they get it off the miners? Did they get it from sneaking into East Mine in the night and stealing from them then? Are they ancient coins? That way it's hinting at some lost ruins deeper in the caverns? Or are the coins minted by the kobolds or some other civilization that's living in the caverns or in ruins in the caverns, hinting at a full society that's living down there? The miners should have some ore that they've been able to mine out of this large of a mine. So assume it's a silver mine, and the miners might, if they survive, they might offer the player characters some of the ore to sell. And then they can sell that to smelters in East Mine or maybe Silvery Moon. Enterprising PCs might ask for a cut of the mining operation in the future, especially if there's some type of contract or quid pro quo worked out where the PCs will continue to check in and protect the miners. In the first adventure, you want to avoid magical items. If you do include some magical items, include consumables. Or it might be better to say, definitely include some magical items, but make sure they're consumables and kind of low level. You want them to be rewarded, but you don't want to give them too much, because that sets an expectation as the campaign continues. So you might have something like the kobold boss had several potions of healing on him, maybe even used 1 or 2 during the final combat, and then the players find the rest of the potions of healing on them. Possibly 1 for each player plus an extra 1 to make it seem like you're not giving 1 for each player. or you could decide a set amount beforehand. How many does the kobold actually use? That leaves how many he's got left that the players can find. The first session. Now, if your group is heavily combat oriented, then start in media res. Don't do any social encounters in the beginning. Don't do any kind of setup that happened in the session 0 with creating the backstories and getting everything to the point of the adventure. And so here you just want to be right into it. Something like Minrin came to you needing somebody to help find some missing miners. It seems their family members in town have learned that the miners have gone missing and they want somebody to help them. You have traveled up to Low Pass and then to East Mine in the hills, where you've talked to some of the miners there, and they've let you know that the missing miners were working to the southeast, but they don't know exactly where. So the next morning you head out, and around noon you find what appears to be an abandoned mine. As you approach the entrance to search for clues, several goblins come rushing out of the tunnel entrance, screaming and ready to attack. Roll initiative. But if your group likes social interaction, then you can start all the way back at the Fox Brew, and you can have Minrin come in, tell them about the families and that they're searching for the missing miners. The players might decide to talk to the family to try to gather any other information they can to figure out, were any of them murderous, or were they actively trying to get themselves killed in some way? Did they know of any danger that was going on? Did they hear any rumors or anything about what was happening at the mine before they went missing? And so you can have a whole session just on the player characters gathering this kind of information. As they go up to East Mine, they can gather information there, talk to the different miners, figure out, get a better sense of where the mine might be that might help give them advantage on their survival roll in trying to find the mine. And then you can do a combination of both, where you can have them do some gather information, and then you can just cut to, okay, now you've gone to East Mine, you've gathered a little more information, but didn't find out much there. And then just around noon, you come across an abandoned mine. When combat happens, you'll want to be descriptive as a DM. And you do this after the attack roll is made, and if it hit, after the damage is determined. You want to be quick about it, avoid long descriptions, just a quick sentence or two that describes and keeps the excitement up of the combat. Like if a player misses with their attack, you can say, you swing your sword at the kobold's neck, but it ducks just in time and steps in ready to attack with its short spear. Or if a kobold hits a player for a small amount of damage, just a couple of points, you can say, the kobold lunges for your face with its short spear, but you're just barely able to parry the tip of the spear enough that it hits you in the chest on your armor, but it definitely has caused a bruise that's going to hurt for a few days after that. One thing I often forget as a DM is that players kind of like to describe their own attacks as well. And so you can make sure that you say, how does that attack hit? Usually, though, it's best to save it for killing blows. So you ask a player, all right, you got a killing blow. How does that resolve? Players can have a lot of fun doing that. You just want to make sure that they don't insert extra actions into their attack. So if they kill a creature, or if they kill a kobold, and they say, all right, I sever its head, and then I pick up its body and throw it at the other kobolds. Well, obviously that takes an extra action. Can't do that, but you can say you slice off the kobold's head and then grab the body before it falls, and then that way they're set up to do it. But so you might have to interject based on how they describe the killing blow or the attack, if you let them describe every attack. While this will increase the amount of time that combat takes, it generally makes it more fun. And so a boring combat feels longer, and a fun combat feels like it's over too soon. And so you definitely want to interject with these little bits of description and flavor so that it keeps everybody at the table interested and invested and wondering what's happening. One of the good things to do is if an enemy, NPC, or monster is reduced to half or less of its hit points, then you let them know that, oh, it's looking very, as they say, bloodied. That's a 4th edition D&D term, I believe. There might be other settings that used it earlier, but that's where I'm familiar with it from. And so bloodied, you can tell the characters, especially like during session 0, you can say, look, I'm going to use bloodied. So if I tell you that it looks very bloody and stuff like that, you know that it's about at half its hit point strength, and you're actually wounding it. And that works really well, especially for like regenerating creatures. You can say, oh yeah, you're cutting, it's bleeding, and they might not notice that that it's healing up, and then and through the combat they're like, but he hasn't said it's bloodied yet. The DM hasn't said it's bloodied. And then when you finally do, then they become aware of just how long it's lasted, which can really heighten the tension. So where to next? Assuming the PCs survive the encounters with the kobolds at the mine, then Minrin rewards them with some coin. Maybe not much. Maybe the miners' families in Silvery Moon are so poor that they only can give a few silver. Or maybe they offer something else in exchange, like they sew the party's symbol or crest into their cloaks. Or maybe they make them new cloaks with a crest. You want to give PCs the time to be able to go to stores and buy goods, buy gear, maybe do a little more searching on their own for their own quests that they've given themselves. Maybe they want to find family members out in the world, and so they want to ask around town. But you can also interweave during sections of this NPCs acknowledging the player characters. They recognize them as the heroes that saved the miners, or they recognize them as, the people that found the dead miners, and oh, what was that about? And you can have little moments of dialogue between them and other NPCs that kind of help fill out the world in a living way. And this downtime may just be 10 minutes of one session. It may be a full session. It may be several sessions where they're just doing their own thing, and they're happy doing it, and you're happy letting them live in this world and figuring things out. But one thing that you can do during this is you can start weaving in other plot hooks and adventure hooks. Plot hooks, I use it interchangeably. You can weave in other adventure hooks into the game as they're interacting with other NPCs. To adventure and beyond. Finally, after an adventure ends, you can start working on other adventure hooks. In the space between sessions, you can create several hooks. I suggest doing 5, maybe 6 adventure hooks that you can start using in the game. You can have NPCs introduce them, you can have events introduce them, and so on. But you want to create 5 or 6 is probably a good start. And you can see already with the work that you've done in the pre-session 0 and during session 0, you've already got a couple of these plot hooks already kind of set up. And when you write out these plot hooks, you just want to do a quick rumor description that you would give to the players. And so it's information so the players get access to immediately about the plot hook. And then you have a DM sentence or two that's about what's really going on, and then give it a level. And so this is the level of difficulty that you're giving that particular plot hook, which may be well above or below what the player characters are at. But the level generally represents the level of a PC party that adventure would be appropriate for. And a lot of times PCs can take a little more than what's presented in the Dungeon Master's Guide I found, and even in Pathfinder. I had an owlbear attack the party, and there were only 4 PCs. Owlbear comes charging in, and then the fighter character, 2 critical hits in a row and drops an owlbear. And I was running the owlbear as is right out of the book, and it was over. Owlbear didn't get a swipe, didn't get an attack. All it basically did is get a screech and close in on the party, and then it didn't get anything after that. So players can often, and it was a party of 2nd level characters against a CR 4, 5, something like that. So players can often handle a little more than what the books say. So that's, yeah, end tangent. So here's some examples for your first, in this Forgotten Realms map, your homebrew setting, set examples of plot hooks after that first adventure that you took them on. First one is a first level appropriate adventure. To the players, you would say something like, bandits have been raiding caravans to the east of Lopass. As a DM, you would say, you would write something like, a company of around 20 bandits are trying to take over the Mountain Pass Road, led by a human fighter named Harud Mozran. Second plot hook, adventure hook, is also first level. And to the players, the rumors would be, the owner of the Green Tankard Tavern says his basement is haunted and is offering 50 gold pieces to anyone who puts an end to it. And you, for your own notes, you would put, a few zombies and crawling claws have broken in from the deeper ruins but haven't managed to figure out how to get through the now locked basement trapdoor. The next one, you bump up. So you have a couple at low level, and then the next one, third level appropriate. Player's text is, a circus from the west has camped across the river from Silvery Moon. They plan to open their doors in a month's time, but are currently offering 100 gold piece bounties for bringing them cursed elves from the high forest alive. And then your own note would be, the cruel leader of the circus, Yalvir Olbrock, wants to learn the secrets of the curse and use it on his enemies. Then throw in a couple that are definitely outside the player's wheelhouse, that are above their level. So fifth level, they hear rumors of people being kidnapped, about 1 or 2 every month, from Wheathold and Silver Farms. And your note is, Thuzun's cult is recruiting members and finding sacrifices. So some of the people kidnapped are actually recruited, and others are taken to be used as sacrifices. That's based off stuff that came up in your pre-session planning. And then finally, also based on your pre-session planning, geared for 9th level characters, rumors that Silvery Moon scouts have learned that a powerful Knoll warlock has gathered several of the tribes under his banner in the Evermoors. And your note is, the warlock is actually a black dragon that has learned how to shape change into a gnoll and is looking to form its own kingdom. Now with these 5 adventure hooks, you can feed them to the PCs. Osgrun the bartender might talk about the Green Tankard haunting and the circus. Minrin might offer money for getting back a caravan's goods from the bandits. The tax collector might also relate stories from the scouts about the warlord, or that people have gone missing from Silver Farms. The players are free to choose any of these to follow, or even go back to the original Kobold Mine to explore the cavern. They can do any of these in any order, whatever sparks their interest. For the 5th level and the 9th level, though, what you want to do is have kind of buffer encounters where it's made clear that where they're going or what they're going to do is above their ability. And so you might have something where they just get the crap beat out of them and they're left for dead at death's door, but they don't die. You can do subdual damage, which is basically pulling punches, and so you take the hit point damage, but when you get reduced to 0, you don't have to make death saves. You can have them kidnapped, and then they can escape from some caged prison somewhere. There's all sorts of things that you can do to really set up the fact that where they're going and what they're pursuing is too powerful for them to do so, and with any certainty of living. Regardless of what they decide, once they go after an adventure, play through that adventure, and once they go after an adventure hook, play through that adventure hook. And then what that allows you to do is they start following up on one of those plot hooks that you've provided. And then you can stretch out a session with basic role playing, maybe a random encounter if you need more time, or you can pull in a quick encounter related to the storyline that they're following, like pull in some bandits that attack them as on their travels. And then when that session ends, that gives you the space to really plan out exactly, get the stat blocks set up and figure out, what's what for that adventure as they go on. Once that adventure ends, though, you go back to those plot hooks that they haven't gone down or that they haven't explored, and you consider how much time it took for them to do the adventure that they just did, and then look at those plot hooks and see if you can advance any of those plot hooks by a little bit. For example, if the last adventure took a week, then you might note bandits have raided another caravan, this one carrying grain and ale for Sundabar. Several customers and one guard were killed by the green tankard zombies, but the rest of the guards put an end to the threat. This effectively ends that plot hook, but you could include rumors of a tunnel into the ruins has been found in the tavern. The circus has had no takers on the bounties and have now increased the offering up to 200 gold piece for a cursed elf. And then only a week has passed, so no new information on the Thuzan cult, because it's only about once a month that people disappear. And then again, only a week has passed, so no new information on the Knoll Warlock. Probably still just gathering and trying to negotiate control over the various Knoll tribes in the Evermoors. If the PCs level up after an adventure, go through those plot hooks and see if you can level anything there up as well. It might not make sense, but then again it might. You might include something like the bandits that are attacking the caravans. They fought several groups of soldiers sent by Silverymoon and Sundabar, which would then give a reason to level up a few of those bandits to more hit dice and better attacks. At any time during the game, whether it's downtime in between sessions or during an adventure, something might come up where you go, oh, I can add another new plot hook. And then when they get back to town, or maybe it arose during the adventure, they find hints of something else somewhere else, like they find an old map that shows buried treasure somewhere near the high forest. You can add these plot hooks into your list as the campaign goes on. You can also close them if you decide the players never seemed interested in it, or if it just makes sense to do so. Like if the players never deal with the bandits, then Silverymoon or Sundabar or both will probably send other adventurers, or maybe even whole groups of soldiers to deal with the bandits, and then you can just close that by saying that the bandits are captured, maybe the leader is taken and imprisoned in Silverymoon, and you can have these kind of background things that are happening that you can just kind of, NPC says, oh, did you hear they captured the bandit in the pass and they got him in the prison here in Silverymoon. Just little tidbits that help the world feel alive. And then at later points, you might break that bandit captain out, and that bandit captain might join the player characters or might fight against them, or anything's possible. The key here is to keep a list of adventure hooks that you can keep updating and evolving as the campaign goes on, that you can keep kind of reintroducing to the players, so that even if they don't take it, it still gives a feel of an evolving, living campaign world instead of something that's just static and never changes. So that wraps up this introduction on how to actually DM your first campaign. I know I've missed some things, and there's probably some important points that I forgot to make or glossed over, or details that maybe you're interested in that you would like to have expanded upon, and I'm open to doing so. Just post in the comments. Thank you, and have a great new year. And oh yeah, I'm supposed to say like and subscribe, but that feels very, I don't like saying it, but I know why I'm supposed to.